It's easy to say forever when you're in love, but what if fate has a different plan? Haruto saw firsthand how unpredictably the wind blows when it comes to matters of the heart. At the start of the movie, we see a young man taking pictures with his camera and reminiscing over his love as he focuses on a pretty tree with cherry blossoms falling in the lovely spring breeze. We see the day Haruto meets Misaki. It's also a beautiful spring day, with the blooming cherry blossoms falling from the trees and lining the streets. Haruto goes to get a haircut at a salon, and Misaki, on her first day, is assigned to him. Haruto is comfortable with her bubbly and friendly nature, so he keeps requesting she cuts his hair, making her his regular. Because of her, he would go to the salon every month so she could trim his hair and they would have easy conversations. Whenever she mentioned a movie that she likes, he would go and watch it several times before his next appointment. The day he found out that she was single, he was so ecstatic, he went to play with little children at the park. He secretly nursed this crush until he worked up the confidence to ask her out. One day, Misaki asks about his profession and Haruto tells her that he's a photographer. This excites Misaki as she seems to hold photographers in high regard, and Haruto, taking advantage of her good mood, nervously asks that she go with him to take some pictures of the cherry blossoms. Misaki is startled and accidentally nips him in the earlobe, causing him to bleed. She freaks out as other hairdressers rush to help stop the bleeding before helping him to a hospital, where he gets properly treated. As they leave the hospital embarrassed and apologetic, Misaki offers to pay the medical bills, but Haruto declines, telling her that she does not have to. Misaki maintains that he got injured because of her and insists that she would do anything to make it up to him. Haruto's ears perk up at the word anything and he has a mischievous look on his face. He asks Misaki to watch the cherry blossoms with him, making it known that it's a date, rendering her speechless. Misaki goes home shocked and we see that she resides with her brother, Takashi, and his girlfriend, Ayano, above the restaurant their family runs. She tells her brother about the encounter with Haruto and his request, and Takashi threatens to hunt Haruto down and chop off his other earlobe. The customers laugh and it is obvious that they have been regulars at Misaki's restaurant for years, as they seem to know a lot about the siblings and their late parents. Ayano scolds Takashi and tells him that Haruto deserves an apology for his injury, but Takashi remains stubborn. Ayano also teases Misaki about the date with Haruto, which makes Misaki blush. She insists that it's not a date but rather compensation for hurting his earlobe with her scissors, but Ayano does not believe her. She urges Misaki to get back into the dating scene and further reveals that Misaki has been talking nonstop about Haruto ever since she gave him his first haircut. Misaki apologizes to her coworkers for the trouble she caused them with Haruto, and her boss urges her to work off the mistake. That evening, after working on a wig as part of her punishment for Haruto's injury, she notices that she has more gray hair in the front part of her hair. This worries her as she's very conscious of her appearance, but her coworkers assure her that the only reason the gray hair keeps popping up is due to the inescapable stress of their job. Haruto then texts her, apologizing for contacting her late, and we see that he's working as a waiter in a food place. In his text, he tells Misaki the time to meet him and gives her directions. She responds with a cute response that makes him happy, but then sends another text that mentions his profession as a photographer, which dampens his mood. Apparently, he had lied about being a professional photographer, and while he did have a camera, he was certainly not a professional. He tells us how photography was his passion and he got his camera, a Nikon F3 from his father which he adored. He moved to Tokyo to take pictures and his very first picture was of the Tokyo Tower. We also see how his excitement to take photographs dies gradually when he starts interning with the photography studio that made him feel small and incompetent. In charge of taking care of the heavy equipment, instead of taking pictures as he hoped, he was worked to the bone and quit within his first year. He started working small part-time jobs but never seemed to last long in any, convincing himself that his creative batteries needed to recharge and he was simply taking a temporary break from photography. Until he met Misaki. The way she nervously cut his hair made him smile and he found her very attractive, so when she asked for his profession, he was compelled to impress her and mentioned photography. Lying to Misaki makes Haruto uneasy, so he resolves to tell her the truth somehow. As they walk the streets lined with cherry blossom trees, Misaki asks why he is not taking any pictures, and nervous, he changes the topic and asks her why she decided to become a hairdresser. She thinks for a minute and then lets out a little laugh before saying magic. Haruto is confused and she laughs again before explaining. She reveals that she used to have curly hair that she was constantly teased about when she was younger and it made her insecure. So Ayano, her brother's girlfriend, took her to a salon where she straightened her hair for the first time, and poof. Like magic, the teasing stopped and that was the end of her troubles. She became more confident to look at herself in the mirror, so she decided to become a hairdresser too so she could make other people look at themselves and feel cute. Haruto listens attentively, smiling as she speaks but soon gets nervous again as she directs the question to him. She asks why he chose to become a photographer, so decides to come clean and confess that he is not a professional photographer. Misaki is confused, so Haruto explains that although he lied to her about being a professional, it was his dream and he thought he had talent, but after working with his boss, he lost his confidence. He tells Misaki that he only lied so she would like him, and Misaki is upset that he would think she would judge him by his profession. She is also upset that he gave up on his dream without trying, and scolds him for not trying harder. Punching his arm, she aggressively encourages him to pick up his camera again and fight for what he wants. Misaki realizes that she is not very close to Haruto and should not be talking to him like that, so she apologizes and walks away quickly, still fuming. Haruto calls out to her and promises to try again and become someone she will be proud of. Weeks pass and Haruto does not contact Misaki, but she continues to think about him and the promise he made. Soon, she turns 25 and Ayano gifts her with a lovely dress and reminds her of how she always used to talk about Haruto being her first customer, which makes Misaki a little sad since he had still not called or texted. One day, Haruto calls and informs her that he had gotten his first paycheck. He discloses that he had gone back to work at the photo studio and wants to treat her to dinner on his first check. Surprised but happy, Misaki agrees, making him equally excited. While preparing for their dinner date, Misaki notices that more of her hair had turned gray, and this worries her a little as she applies mascara to darken them. They have an awkward but pleasant dinner and Haruto tells her about the studio he works at and his mentor. He also explains that he sees a camera as a magical tool and how fascinating it is to freeze and capture wonderful moments. While eating dessert, Haruto gives her the present he got for her birthday and Misaki is touched to see a scissor case. He likens her smile to cherry blossoms in full bloom, which was the reason for the color choice of the scissor case, and Misaki blushes furiously. After their dinner, she gives him a haircut using her new scissor case and Haruto promises to become a professional photographer and make his lie come true. He asks that when he finally takes a really good photo, Misaki will be there to see it. He reveals that he is in love with her and he is glad it happened. She asks for some time to think about what he said, which disappoints him a little. He sees her off and after an adorable moment chasing her train, she declares that she would reciprocate his feelings and asks him to be her boyfriend. Misaki goes home that day in shock. The customers eating in their restaurant as well as her brother and his girlfriend notice her solemn expression, and she tells them of Haruto's love declaration, which excites Ayano, but irritates Takashi. As the movie progresses, we see Misaki and Haruto go on different adventures and have fun. From getting sore arms from hours of ping pong to shopping for different outfits, eating out and going to the movies, they run around the city and even fall asleep on public transportation. Soon, Misaki falls ill and Haruto goes to see her. Freaking out over her appearance, she hurries to put on makeup and look presentable, but Haruto arrives early so she puts on a nose mask. Takashi, who is still angry at Haruto for using his injury as an opportunity to ask Misaki for a date, gives Haruto a hard time and prevents him from going into Misaki's room, so he talks to her from the entrance. He encourages her to take off her nose mask after promising not to laugh, and Misaki complies after a few minutes. Haruto makes her feel pretty and asks for a picture, but she refuses, feeling self-conscious. They have a moment and as they lean closer, they are interrupted by Takashi, who had been listening around the corner. He drags Haruto out and insists on taking Misaki to the hospital. The scene changes and we hear someone groaning in pain. It's Misaki. As she writhes in pain on the floor, she remembers her visit to the hospital with Takashi. They had been referred to a doctor of genetic disorders who provincially diagnosed her with progeroid syndrome, which would cause her to age rapidly. He makes it known that the disease comes with wrinkles, gray hair, weak bones, and a weaker immune system, as well as a malignant tumor, but she would still need to undergo a thorough examination before he can make a proper diagnosis. Misaki does a little research on the disorder and, scared by what she sees, she decides to put it out of her mind. She dresses up nicely and goes out to meet Haruto to watch a fireworks display at a festival, but it rains heavily so the display is cancelled. They eat ice cream and after the rain stops, they get sparklers and have fun lighting them with some little children who had also come for the festival. As Haruto helps the children light their sparklers, Misaki sits down to get some rest and her mind wanders to the doctor's provincial diagnosis. Haruto interrupts her thought and asks her to marry him, which startles her since they've only been dating for a few months, but Haruto insists, and Misaki silences him with her lips. Misaki and Takashi return to the hospital after the test results come in and the doctor makes a proper diagnosis, telling them that his suspicion was correct, and she is suffering from progeroid syndrome. He tells them that there was no reliable method of treating the disease yet, and they could only wait for it to run its course. Misaki is stunned that she would become elderly while still 25 and die within a year, but the doctor only has encouraging words to offer. Back at their restaurant, Misaki sits numbly, dreading the fact that she would turn ugly soon. She goes to the salon where she works and quits her job, telling them that she has decided to work in her friend's salon while Ayano waits for her outside. After packing her things home, she sees the scissor case that Haruto had given her. And finally, the reality of her situation dawns on her and finally, she cries her eyes out. Haruto returns from work one day to find Misaki waiting for him on the stairs of his apartment building. Startled, he asks if there was a problem, but Misaki assures him that she just misses him and wants to spend some time with him, so he leads her into his cramped apartment. While looking around, Misaki sights Haruto's camera on the shelf and announces that she wants to take some pictures, so they go to the park and Haruto assists her in taking photos of different things, including him. Haruto wants to take a picture of Misaki, but she refuses and brings up his proposal, which he decides was not a very good idea since it was too early. Misaki surprises Haruto that she would be staying the night, and even though he loves the idea, he is scared of her brother. Misaki dismisses his fears and they spend a steamy night together. Tearfully, Misaki sneaks out early in the morning, her heart breaking as she realizes they cannot grow old together. As weeks pass, Haruto continues to work as a photography intern, but is worried since Misaki has not responded to any of his texts since their night together. He goes to the salon she used to work at but was informed that she quit a month ago to work at a friend's salon. Shocked, he goes to her house but Takashi refuses to let him in, claiming that he does not know of her whereabouts, so Haruto hands him an envelope containing the pictures she took the other day and asks her brother to give it to her. After Haruto leaves heartbroken and even more confused, Takashi urges Misaki to give Haruto closure so he can move on. We see Misaki in her room, feeling self-conscious and wearing a hooded sweater to hide her aging skin. After looking at the pictures and reading the note that was attached, she decides to listen to her brother and calls Haruto, telling him that she went back to her ex-boyfriend, whose salon she now works at. Haruto does not believe this and pleads to see her, but Misaki already has a plan. She had asked her doctor to pretend to be her new boyfriend, so he takes the phone from her and tells Haruto to stop disturbing Misaki. Upon hearing a male voice, Haruto believes them and crumples in tears, his heart ripping open as he screams in agony. Later, he gets into trouble with his boss after he forgets to charge the batteries of the photography equipment due to lack of focus, and is scolded and advised to not let a breakup affect his professionalism. His mentor then talks to him privately, advising him on how to take his craft as a photographer seriously. Over at Misaki's house, we see Takashi's girlfriend, Ayano, treating Misaki's hair as they have a light conversation. On the desk before them is a blurry picture of Haruto that Misaki had taken on their last day together, and she stares at it wishing she had allowed him to take her picture when she was still pretty. As Misaki talked, Ayano continued to comb the hair treatment into her hair, only for the hair to start coming away with even the gentlest of strokes. With shaky hands and tears pooling in her eyes, Ayano continues to comb, hiding the hair falling out from Misaki's view. Broken-hearted and depressed, Haruto goes to drink at a bar, accompanied by a female coworker. She consoles him and tells him to forget Misaki, but when he says he can't, she offers to help him. Confused, Haruto asks what she means, but before he can finish his question, she leans in and kisses him. Misaki still keeps wearing hooded clothing and a nose mask to cover her face, and she also carries a cane that she needs to walk. Takashi soon finds a small clinic that offers electromagnetic wave therapy, which he found out would help Misaki get better, so he takes her there. The journey is a long one from home and he had to carry her on his back up a long flight of stone stairs, but he takes her there every day, refusing to lose hope. Every day, Misaki goes through a series of gruesome treatments, with wires attached to her head and body, and she gets weaker and weaker. The treatment costs a lot of money, but Takashi does not mind and pays every deposit on time. This worries Ayano as she cannot see any positive difference in Misaki's health other than weaker bones and increased fatigue. She tells Takashi that the treatment costs too much to not be effective and urges him to stop taking Misaki there, but he refuses, saying he has to help his sister somehow. Ayano insists and Takashi gets angry, saying that the only reason she is saying that is because she is not family. This hurts Ayano, but Takashi doesn't care as he tells her to stop coming with them to the hospital. Haruto continues to take pictures as he struggles to move on with his life. His mentor continues to give him harsh but honest feedback on his work, pushing him to get better and find meaning in his work. He explains that photography isn't just a profession, but rather a way of life. He teaches Haruto to pass a message through the photos he takes, and only then will he become worthy. Later, Haruto goes hiking with his coworker in the mountains and they both have a nice conversation, sharing dreams and aspirations. The next day, Haruto gets out his camera and takes pictures of the beautiful mountain scenery, thinking about his mentor's words. His mind soon wanders to Misaki, and after a few minutes of pondering, he gets out his phone and deletes her number. At roughly the same time, Takashi walks up the flights of stone stairs leading to the clinic with Misaki on his back. They get to the entrance of the clinic to find it locked, and as Takashi wonders if he made a mistake about the appointment date, an elderly man walks by, so Takashi hurries to him, asking why the clinic was closed. Turns out the clinic was a scam and the doctor had gotten arrested the day before for scamming patients out of their money in exchange for fake treatment. Disappointed, the siblings sit at the top of the stairs and Takashi promises to find another clinic, but Misaki shakes her head vigorously. She doesn't want her brother to spend any more money on her, but Takashi is upset that he could not get her decent treatment and doesn't want to give up yet. He tearfully apologizes for being a useless brother, but Misaki consoles him and reminds him of everything he had done for her ever since their parents died. As she pats his back, we see her fingers looking a little wrinkly. As they make their way home, Misaki suddenly has a crisis in the car, groaning in pain, so Takashi hurriedly takes her to the hospital. On the hospital bed, she weakly has her hands in the air, pretending to be a hairdresser once again and attending to customers. Ayano sees her doing this and tears spring to her eyes. She controls her emotions before going into the room, and as she places down the supplements and beauty supplies she brought for Misaki, she tells her that she doesn't need them. Ayano means to tell her that even with her illness, Misaki still looks lovely, but Misaki takes it the wrong way and flares up. She's upset that Ayano does not have any wrinkles and does not need to worry about how she looks or how people see her. She insists that Ayano stop worrying and focus on the wedding preparations. Ayano, knowing about their financial issues, tells Misaki that the wedding has been postponed. Misaki thinks her brother and his girlfriend are waiting for her to die before getting married, so she screams at Ayano, not giving the other woman a chance to explain. Later, Misaki tries to get to the bathroom, but she walks very slowly and doesn't make it in time, wetting her pants and the floor with pee. The expert nurses notice this and swiftly get her cleaned up without making her feel ashamed. That night, we finally see Misaki's face when she looks at herself through the camera of her phone. Her hair is almost completely gray, and her face is so wrinkly she could pass as a 60-year-old, even though she had not yet turned 26. Back at home, Takashi is making calculations, and just as he realizes that he barely has enough to pay his sister's hospital bills, Ayano offers her savings. Takashi is hesitant, but his girlfriend insists that Misaki was her sister too. Soon, Misaki comes home for Christmas. She asks that Ayano stop coming over because she is jealous of her beauty and seeing her every day would cause Misaki to hate her. But Ayano refuses, not caring if Misaki hated her or not. When it's time to write down Christmas wishes and put them in the stockings, Misaki asks for her suffering to end, but later, Takashi sees a crumpled piece of paper in her room. Her initial wish was to talk to Haruto again. Takashi reaches out to Haruto and tearfully tells him the whole truth. He apologizes for his behavior and begs Haruto to come to talk to Misaki once again, but Haruto doesn't have to be told twice. He had not gotten over Misaki completely and was both relieved and shocked to find that she did not return to her ex. He goes to their home and talks to her through the door, consoling her in a way that only he can. After he leaves, Takashi apologizes for not asking for her permission before inviting Haruto, but Misaki is ecstatic. Haruto continues to go to her. Every day, after work, he would sit at her door and they would talk for long hours, talking about different things as he tells her everything that goes on in his life. He also talks about the future as if she's not sick, and this makes Misaki genuinely happy. Haruto does not know what she currently looks like, but he had fallen in love with her heart, not her face, so it was easy for him to stay at her door, even on cold nights. With his exhibition approaching, he gives her an invite and reminds her of the promise he made, to show her when he finally took a good photo. Misaki is too scared to go out in her current state and refuses the invitation. But after Haruto leaves, Takashi scolds her harshly, willing her not to give up on Haruto the way she had given up on everything since she got sick. Moved by her brother's words, Misaki decides to go to the exhibition. Haruto does not know about this decision, but he continues to hope that she comes and waits. After a few hours, he decided to go to her house and bring her over, but Misaki was not home. Her brother does not know where she is either, and worried, they frantically search for her. Misaki gets to the studio and is directed to Haruto's section, where the pictures displayed on the wall bring back happy memories. Fulfilled, she makes her way home as it starts to snow, but the cold weakens her bones and she falls to the ground. Haruto continues to search for Misaki and comes upon an old lady lying in the snow. He picks up her pink, furry hat and helps her up as she thanks him sweetly before he hurries off. He did not recognize who does not know whether to be sad or relieved as she makes her way home. She settles upon the latter and peacefully passes away days later. Haruto comes to pay his respects and asks to see her room. While looking around, he sees a familiar pink hat on the dresser and, realizing his mistake, crumples to the floor in tears, ashamed that he didn't recognize the love of his life. He goes home devastated and contemplates taking his before he was interrupted by Ayano with a letter from Misaki. In her letter, Misaki urges Haruto to be happy and continue taking pictures. Although carrying the guilt of the day he failed to recognize her, he decides to listen to her. The movie ends with Haruto taking pictures of blooming cherry blossoms in spring in memory of Misaki.